This is our one owner, 265,000 mile, 2004 XC90. This waving inflating glove means this PCV system is completely clogged. If I don't tear this intake manifold off and replace the oil trap system today, the positive crankcase pressure will blow out the camshaft or rear main seals, dumping all its oil, killing this 2.5T engine. So to fix this, the entire intake manifold needs to come off. And while I'm that deep into it, we're swapping out fuel injectors with a fresh kit from FCP Euro to restore our fuel atomization. Disconnect the negative with the 10. There we go. Let's go through and remove the PCV component, which is underneath this intake manifold. First, let's remove this cross member from the motor mount. It's 18 millimeter. Two 14 millimeter on each side. And let's remove this out of the way. And set it aside. Let's remove the dipstick. Set it aside. A T25 Torx on the charge air pipe. Hose clamps. A little stubby. And let's get this out of the way. A T30 to remove the plastic cover. And let's move these out of the way. Now we're starting to see our fuel line and our ejectors are sitting here. Each one of these are our ejectors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 injectors. We're going to be replacing those. We're going to clean this up. This is the intake manifold we got to remove. So let's work on it. Let's remove the dipstick port to 10 millimeter and pull it from the block. There you go. It's going to have an O-ring. Set it aside. Remove the fresh air intake, 10 millimeter. Let's remove the wiring harness from around the fuel line and injectors. Be very careful. These things have got millions of heat cycles by now, so they get brittle. Be very careful. Be patient. Don't break your lines. I used a nice pick. Pushed it in, grabbed it. Push in the pins to remove your wire harness. Set it aside. Remove the frame rail 10 millimeters. Remove the Schrader valve cap, and we're going to purge whatever pressure is remaining in this line. Wear your safety glasses. Return your cap. Let's pop this fuel rail off. We got our line connected here still, so we're just being gentle at the moment. We can disconnect our fuel line. That's with 2 green tabs, top and bottom. You push those in and it'll lift off like so. Make sure that all the O-rings came off with your injectors. So here's the injectors I'm going to be replacing with some Bosch. Now this is going to have some fuel in it, so make sure you dispose of the fuel properly. I wanted to point out that each one of these fuel injector connectors has this rubber piece in there. One of them came out and stuck onto my fuel rail, so make sure you get them put back in there. Don't lose those. Just make sure they're all in there. 1, 2, 3 is now in, 4, 5. All 5 of them are in. Now we're getting to the point where we can get to removing this intake manifold, but we got to remove this hose. Be careful, these are hard and brittle at this point of their life. So we're just going to pop it off, and it should also pop right out. This needs to be removed. Hose tool, just pop it out of the way. We've got all new clamps in the kit we got for this. See if we can get a pick in there, kind of break it free a little bit. Okay, now this throttle housing needs to pop off the bottom of your intake. It's held on by a 7mm clamp. Mine sits at an angle about like this. Just use some body weight and pop it off. There it is. Okay, that's off. Time for a glove change. Now we can remove the 3 top bolts and the 3 bottom bolts out of this intake manifold. The top bolts we remove, the bottom bolts we just loosen. And one more thing, there's going to be a 17mm Banjo bolt down here we got to remove for this hose. So I'm having difficulty with my tools getting to this last intake manifold bolt right here. The only way I'm going to be able to get to that intake bolt back there is remove this water hose. I tried swivel sockets, remove the 2 T30s, pop this off. Might need to tap it. Gonna have some coolant flow. The only way I could get my 10mm on this 3rd bolt was I had to take the Torx 30 top bolt out of this thermostat housing, loosen the bottom one underneath it, just loosen it a little bit so that this would move slightly out of the way. Now I can get my 1/4 inch 10mm on there and loosen it up. Now we should be able to remove this. There we go. There's a 17mm Banjo bolt. We've got to get loosened up here, and we should be able to pull this intake manifold out of the way. There we go. We got one more connector. Okay, wire harness for the throttle body here. Mine was really stuck in there, so be careful on pulling that connector out. Now you can move this out of your way. So now we have access to our PCV box here. Once we get that disconnected, we can lift it off. We're going to be removing this. I have a replacement. Again, pry that one up. We've got to disconnect the box from the engine. Here. Get another hose clamp. I'll be replacing this. Pry that hose off. And now there's two 10mm bolts holding this onto the engine. Let's get those removed. This one's nicely tucked in there, but you can get to it with a 1/4 inch. Let's remove this. Whew. And there you have it. It's at least half clogged. It's not fully clogged. Saved us from catastrophic failure by still having a little bit open, but definitely needed to be replaced. Lastly, remove the rubber coupling at the bottom of the breather box. That was just half full and it just fell out as I pulled it up. Now you can see in here, this is completely clogged. We got to get in there and clean that out. That is a big problem. This is where we want to remove the oil cap. And we're going to blow some compressed air into this. And we should fill it up here. You can hear it. You can see it's blowing the air up in there. That's a good sign. You can feel it. If you're not feeling that air and hearing that, then there's some other problems that are outside of this video scope. And that requires dropping the oil pan and doing some other work. This is where I'm going to go through and get this all cleaned up. Well, we got it cleaned up the best I can get it. I can at least see the aluminum block again. But since I got a new crankcase hose assembly, which is going to replace this, because I certainly did, this was brittle and it did break, but I kind of knew it was going to happen. So I had ordered this. I'm going to pop that hose now off. Now let's just finish getting the Banjo bolt for the coolant line tight. I don't know if you can see, but the Banjo bolt is right back here, and that runs the coolant portion. Here's the old assembly. I think it was important to show, although I broke the line on it, it would have been like this here. I wanted to show how it's completely clogged. If you look here, it's full of carbon through that whole line. That's a huge problem. We've got the other assembly replaced, sitting here ready to go. There's one Banjo bolt, that's the coolant line that goes in, and the other end connects up back here. Since we have the intake manifold disassembled, remove this throttle body, take it off, clean it up well, get all the carbon, soot out of there, replace the gasket, and reassemble. 10mm. Make sure you replace this gasket. Let's give this a cleaning. Get your surface nice and clean. Get the old gasket off. With the throttle body gasket surface cleaned, we're going to install a new gasket. Surface body cleaned, and this only goes on one direction. We'll tighten the bolts to 8 to 10 Newton meters. Okay, throttle body's cleaned, ready to be installed. Let's get this box opened for the injectors. Bosch. Let's change out the injectors on this fuel rail. I've got a little standard motor oil. These O-rings on these injectors, the rubber on these are built to where they can have petroleum lubricant on them, whereas rubber components such as these, you don't add petroleum based. They'll swell, they'll crack, disintegrate on these kind of hoses. We use a silicone based or standard dish soap. So let's go ahead and disassemble this fuel rail, remove the old injectors. It's a T25 Torx, 3 bolts. We'll clean this up also. Remove the hold down. Now these should just pop right out of there. Yep. Now as you can see, the O-ring came off inside the rail. We want to make sure that that does not happen. Make sure you remove that. That one came, the O-ring came on that one. There we go. So we only had one come off inside the fuel rail. Let's extract that. There we go. Now if you're not replacing your injectors, definitely replace the O-rings at minimum. I'm going to clean this rail with brake cleaner. Got new injectors. Part numbers are the same. There's nothing wrong with the ones that came out. They're just old. They probably have 100,000 plus miles on them, so they're due for a service change. And while I was in there, might as well spend the extra 20 minutes and do these injectors. The sides are a little different on each side, so make sure you put them in the right way. We put a little coat of oil on there, on that O-ring, and send it home. Boom. You don't want to pinch those O-rings as you send them home. Reassemble the hold down. When you put these in, they have a slot that the plate's going to slide into to keep them in place. They don't bottom all the way out in that fuel rail. Replace your T25s. The new injectors and fuel rail is ready to be replaced. All right, let's get the oil trap installed and start putting this back together. We got the 2 rubber fittings. I used water and some standard dish soap so I can slide those on without them binding. So the lower block and the upper block ports. Reinstall your 10 millimeters and torque to 8 Newton meters. Tighten your hose clamps. Add your breather hose and clamp. I added some soapy water to get that on there easier and secure it down. Use your old line, your breather line, to make the same pattern with your new lines. Again, use some soapy water. I did not get this hose clamp here. Either didn't order it, they didn't ship it, but anyway, I have a Maddox kit. Let's put on the new intake manifold gasket. We're just going to hold it in place with the bottom bolts. Let's remove the old thermostat housing, 7 millimeter clamp. It's a little tight in there, so loosen that hose up. You can hear it sticking a little bit. There we go. My thermostat assembly came with the gasket, and my hose kit came with this hose connector. So that will go on there. Let's put our new thermostat housing on prior to installing the intake manifold. It's a T30, and Torque to 17 Newton meters. Install the thermostat housing hose and clamp. Reinstall your radiator hose. And now we can reassemble the intake manifold. Remember the 17mm Banjo bolt. Make sure you have new crush washers. Clean out the ports inside this Banjo bolt. It has a one-way valve in there, so make sure that that gets cleaned out. It's good to go and it's working properly. Breathe through it. Suck, breathe, suck, breathe. It should close off as you suck. The Banjo bolt will go through this Banjo fitting and in back into the bottom of your intake. The 3 bottom bolts are in place. They're not tight, they're just loose because this will sit, your intake manifold will sit on it with these open holes, right? Purposely meant for that. So guide your hose through, guide this other hose through, your fuel line. Watch, make sure you don't catch anything in the process. Now I can actually get to this rear manifold bolt, this bottom one, with this replacement water housing, I feel. Otherwise, I would go back in and loosen that water housing up from the block a little bit again, move it slightly over so I can get this fitting on there. Finger tighten your Banjo bolt, your 17mm Banjo bolt here on the bottom of your intake manifold. Just a reminder, it's kind of coming into the intake manifold at an angle. It doesn't come in straight up. It comes in at an angle. So if you finger tighten it first, you'll ensure that you don't strip those threads. Let's finish getting this intake manifold on. Those 3 bottom bolts. Here we go. Very good. That'll connect there. That's hose is there. Our injectors, fuel line rail, hoses are still connected up. Everything is good. That Banjo bolt's been tightened. Let's put our top screws in. I'm torquing down to 14 Newton meters to start. And then I'll come back and hit it to 20. Factory recommendation is 20 Newton meters for these intake bolts. 14, 14, 14, 14, 14, 20 Newton meters. 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, 20 on that last one down there. Got you. Let's do our hose, a little soapy water. Clamp the hose. Our hose line. But to get the hose clamp onto here, we're going to remove this coil. Make it a little easier. 10mm. Pop! Crimp the hose clamp. Put your coil back in. Put the clamp back on the throttle body intake. I'm going to position it like this. I think I can get to it at this angle. Back up your throttle body connector, electrical connector. Time to put in the dipstick tube. We're going to replace the old seal. Let's send this home. Fuel line on. Injectors in. Install the bolts and torque to 10 Newton meters. Tap on your wire harness. Fuel injectors, temperature sensor. To install the engine and fuel rail covers. Pay attention to getting the groove of this hose into the groove of your cover. Right here. Connect up your boost charge hose. Finish the connection up front. Attach your charge pipe back to your manifold. Connect back up your air intake, your stabilizer bar. Reconnect the battery in the back. We're officially complete. But how do we know all that work and effort we did actually paid off? Well, we go back to a glove test. Simple. Do we have vacuum or do we have pressure? We should have vacuum now. That's how this is designed. We should get some vacuum and not pressure coming out of this oil cap. Let's check it out and see what happens. Keep an eye on that glove. That's exactly what we want to see. We want to see a vacuum. The glove pulling in, not pressure. Straight up, we did it. Work is complete. Thanks for watching Hacking Patina. I'm your host, Sean. We'll see you on the next show.